Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome this evening to Wellingborough ISW's monthly meeting. Wayne from the Wayne Moore. Sorry, Wayne. Your surname completely slipped my mind then for a minute. Wayne Moore from the Rail RMT, Rail Maritime and Transport Union. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm getting. My memory's not completely folding. And Wayne is a member of the National Executive Committee of the RMT. Lives in Bletchley, although the advertising I think said Daventry. Very easily to get confused between the two. And is a member of the Bletchley and Northampton branch of the RMT Union. It's no secret, according to his blurb, his biography that I've seen, that Wayne is passionate about driver-only operations in the rail industry and in this campaign to maintain guards on trains and to stop our rail industry going simply to driver only without support for customers and what have you. So passionate about that, and I'm sure you may mention that. Is also heavily involved currently in the industrial dispute that we know is taking place, and I'm sure that Wayne will want to say something about that as well, because that's obviously part of the ongoing campaign to protect public transport and our rail services. He's also passionate in the general sense about rail and bus industries and believes that they should be brought back into public ownership. And I'm sure you'll be wanting Wayne to say something about that as well during the course of the of this evening. So thank you very much, Wayne, and for coming and joining us this evening, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul, and thank you for the invite tonight. It's great to be able to address you and get across what we're doing as the RMT and get across the policies and especially about the dispute that we're currently entered into. Just to give a brief update where we are there at the moment, we've got 2 strike days coming up on the 1st of October, which is the Saturday before the Tory Party conference. So hopefully we're going to slightly disrupt them getting up there. On the same day, we've got lots of other trade unions out. The CWU are out with the postal workers. We've got the ASLEF train drivers are taking strike action on that day as well. We're hoping that TSSA come and join in, and we'll be having a lot of trade unionists on picket lines on the street on that day, and we're talking 100,000 plus people taking strike action, which is absolutely phenomenal when you bear in mind the anti-trade union laws that we face at the moment, which are only going to get worse, by the way, if Liz Truss actually implements what she said in her election campaign to be the leader of the Tory party. Our next strike date, which we've laid down today, will then be on the following Saturday, which will be the 8th of October. And we'll be meeting again the week before that to review our strategy and look at further strike dates. And we've also got to be conscious that due to the anti-trade union laws, we've got a reballot coming up very, very shortly. So we'll be concentrating on making sure that we get that over the line, match the numbers that we got first time round, if not better those numbers, and send a clear message to the government and the privateers that we're not backing down, we're not going to go away, and we want a very, very good square deal for our members. A little bit of background on the dispute is in two strands. So we're fighting on the train operating companies, which obviously operate the passenger side of rail services across the country. We're dealing with the TOCs that come under the DFT banner there. So we have what we also call open access operators like Hull Trains and people like that, like Eurostar, which aren't tied in to the DFT, and we do actually have strike action going on Hull Trains as well on those 2 dates, so that they're joining in with us, which is absolutely fantastic. And basically what's happening here is in my opinion, these are cuts that they've wanted to make on the railway for many, many years, but they've used COVID as their excuse now. No one was travelling, and there's no money on the railway. Well, if you've travelled on the railway in the last few months, as I do every day in and out of London, you will see how busy it is. And I don't believe their figures that it's not up as high as what they're. I think it's a lot higher than what they're actually saying. And we've actually noticed that there's a lot more leisure travel going on these days as opposed to the commuter travel, because as we're all sat on Zoom at the moment, a lot of people have got used to working from home, and it becomes the norm. Why would you travel into London every single day for 5 days when you could probably spend 2 or 3 of those days at home working from home? So yes, it's changed slightly, but there's still plenty of money going into the railway network, because we can see that in the profits and the dividends that are being paid out to the privateers and people like that. So the cuts that they're looking at making, if I start on Network Rail, they want to reform the maintenance side of it. And basically, the first proposal that was put on the table to us is they wanted to cut 2,300 maintenance jobs. That's 2,300 people that physically go on the track, look at the track, repair the track, look at the overhead wires, so on and so forth. They're calling it modernising in maintenance, and modernising, by the way, is the latest buzzword that's going around. And basically, what modernising stands for is cutting staff. So they're gonna fly drones everywhere, and the drones are so good they're gonna detect everything and repair everything and so on and so forth. But drones didn't find 2 IEDs that were planted on a railway line up in the Manchester area, I believe it was, at the start of this week. It was actually 2 track workers that were walking along the track that found these incendiary devices trackside, which could have caused a massive issue, if you know what I mean, if that had gone off. So you can't beat eyes and ears, and we get criticised that we won't modernise, but we modernise every single day of the week on the railway. The railway changes and evolves. And if you look at the first knock-ins of the railway, it was actually a police officer that walks in front of a train with a red flag to stop traffic. Well, we don't do that anymore. So we've come a long way in modernising from that to where we are now. So we modernise all the time, and we want to make the job as easy for our members to do. So we got no issue with modernising, but the modernising plans that they're putting in place is cutting staff, and we can't accept that. These guys have been out, they're coming out in all weathers, when it's tipping down with rain, snow, hail, baking hot. If you remember the recent heat wave, they was having the guys out there painting the white bits on the track to stop them buckling. Well, a drone can't do that. So, the irony is, and this goes to all rail workers, that we were essential key workers all the way through the COVID pandemic. Now COVID's disappeared and we've been told that it no longer exists. We're just greedy, power hungry, money begging, whatever it is, union members, and it couldn't be further from the truth. If you look, we actually suspended strike action over the morning of the Queen. Whether people thought that was the right thing to do or not, we decided it was appropriate to do that, and our members went above and beyond to ensure that additional services got people into London that wanted to go and pay their respects. And then all of a sudden, come Monday night, we were back to being these horrible union members, which are disrupting the entire country. So they pick and choose when we're going to be, key workers and when we're valuable. So on the Network Rail, there's the first thing. They want to modernise maintenance. What they also want to do is change how maintenance happens, and that will include more night work for our members and more weekend work. And that we got to look here. This is a massive attack on people's personal lives. We've all got families, we've all got people that we want to go home to at the end of the day, but we're being forced out of that. And the social aspect, I mean, the railway is unsociable enough at the best of times. The shift systems are just absolute nightmare. You do not have a social life when you work on the railway. Everyone thinks it's whistles and green flags, but it really isn't. It's getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and taking trains full of grumpy people sometimes into London and not getting a thank you for it. But and they want to make that worse. They want Sunday as part of the working week. We're not overly opposed to something like that, but it needs to be on our terms and conditions as well. We can work around this. We deliver a 7-day railway as it is. It's very rare that anything's cancelled on a Sunday, and in fact our members are more eager to work on a Sunday because there's overtime involved in it than they probably are to turn up on a Monday morning, if you know what I mean. So it's very rare that anything gets cancelled on a Sunday due to short staff. But what they want to do is to ensure that they've got this service there by making sure that you work a compulsory Sunday. And we've seen it in the past where they've said, you'll do no more than 12 Sundays a year. And next thing you know, you're up to 30 Sundays a year on some train operating companies. And we can't accept that. So we're happy to work with them on stuff like this, but it's not just impose it, let's negotiate it. That's the idea of being a trade union. So it's the work-life balance for our members in Network Rail. It's the attack on their jobs. And it's also a very derisory pay offer of 4% this year and 4% next year if we sign up to this absolute massacre of our terms and conditions that are going on. And I could spend the next 3 hours telling you about the attacks on the terms and conditions, but I'm not going to bore you with all that. We'll let Mick Lynch go and deal with the people with regard to that. So on the train operating companies, it's slightly different. And I'm getting very frustrated when we do these things and people say, it's all about pay. Greedy, greedy, greedy. You know, it's £44,000 a year on average that a rail worker's earning. Well, I can tell you as a train guard myself, our basic is £34,000 a year. In the booking offices, they're earning about £23,000 a year, and our cleaners on Churchill contracts in London are earning £11.20, £11.40 an hour. So that is nowhere near the £65,000 that they quote for a train driver, or so on and so forth. You know, and that's what we're fighting for, is a decent living wage for our people who are facing a choice this winter about turning the lights on or sitting in the dark, and turning on the gas fire or sitting there and freezing. Not to mention how on earth they're going to fill their fridges and bits and pieces like that with the price of food that's going forward. So on the train operating companies, the attacks are coming along the lines of they want to close every single booking office in this country, 978 booking offices they want to shut. And they want to force these people out from behind the glass to be floor walkers, as they did on London Underground. When they did this on London Underground, the 650 people that they took out the booking offices and put on the floor, they're now trying to get rid of. So that just goes to show you where the plan is starting. And I'm sure that everybody here at some stage has used a booking office. I still use it now. I've worked on the railway 18 years, but I still go to my local booking office at Bletchley for them to get me the best ticket and to give me timetable advice when I want it. And there's a lot of people that don't want to use the train line. There's a lot of people that don't know how to use a ticket vending machine or anything like that. And when I first started on the railway, it took me 3 weeks to learn the ticketing system. Yet we expect you guys to turn up at Wellingborough Station or wherever and hit the button on the ticket machine and buy the best ticket available to you across the cheapest ticket, and choose the correct route for that. It's absolutely ludicrous, and that's what we're there for. And actually, the national conditions of carriage state that when you go to a booking office, they must provide you with the cheapest ticket available for the journey which you're taking. Well, the ticket machines don't do that. I can tell you that for free, because they always put the ticket that they want you to buy at the top and never put the ticket that you should be buying anywhere on site. And if you're in a rush for a train, you don't have time to scroll through and do that. So they want to replace all of our booking office staff, one with cafes, Costa Cafes, so they can maximise even more money. And then they want to bring these out into, say, the concourse. And what that will then mean is they will go from just a traditional ticket seller in the booking office to manning the barriers, minor repairs on things like the barriers, the ticket vending machines, all the disabled assist, which they already do the disabled assist, by the way, and then along to basically looking after the station. So almost like an old station master type thing. But there's not enough jobs for all of our members at the minute to be able to do that, if you know what I mean. We went from I think we had 5 staff at Bletchley at one stage. We're down to 1 member of staff now who's doing permanent earlies. And then when she goes, that booking office is closed via stealth, because they are not recruiting. So what we're finding is a lot of people are coming out the booking offices and they're not recruiting back in to fill those vacancies. So that's a multitasking station staff. What they want to do with the guards, thank you very much for bigging up the fact that I am so anti-DOO, it is unbelievable. Drivers drive trains. Airline pilots fly planes. You don't expect an airline pilot to walk down the aisle at 33,000 feet serving you with a cold can of Heineken or a nice hot cup of coffee, do you? So why should we expect a train driver to open and close doors and deal with incidents that are going on behind? I want to get to my destination as safe as possible, and I want my driver to be concentrating on the signals in front and the track in front, not worrying about the drunks halfway down the train which are harassing some young lady or a load of football fans that are having a row with another load of football fans or anything like that. That's why we've got guards on trains. It's not the best of jobs, it's not the easiest of jobs to do, but you'll notice that if you become a guard, you normally finish your career as a guard as well. You know, we've got guards with 30, 40 years in. I'm 18 and a half years in. It was a temporary job for me and I'm still there now. It's almost a vocation for us. Once you do it, you enjoy doing it, you know, along those lines. But the important thing is there, and I can allude to two incidents where DOO would have been a complete nightmare. One was my own incident. I had a lady on my train going to the toilet and set herself on fire. The driver was dealing with all of the protection of the other trains around us because the train was on fire. I evacuated the passengers from there and coordinated the fire brigade turning up. If there wasn't a guard on board, we would have had passengers running all over live lines because the driver would have been thinking, am I protecting the train and the other lines and protecting other trains from the incident that was taking place? Or have I got to round up these 40 odd people that are running around on the track? It's a recipe for disaster along those lines. We had an incident where one of our trains hit the tunnel wall at Watford a few years back and the driver was actually trapped in the cab. So had the guard not been on the train that day, there would have been no one to coordinate what was going on with the passengers and keeping them calm whilst they were waiting for the emergency services to turn up. So what they want to do is dilute the role of the guard and they want to take the safety critical duties away. So what I say about a guard is we're a jack of all trades and a master of none. We do every single job on the railway apart from drive the train. So we assist the disabled passengers, we sell tickets, we give information, we open and close doors, but we're primarily there for the safety of the passengers on board that train. And they want to be, if they take our safety critical duties away from us, which are the opening and closing of the doors, and we have to have a lot of route knowledge as well. We need to know every inch of track. We need to know what signalling system we're on. We need to know who the controlling signal box is. We need to know who to contact in an emergency. We need to know what lines are fast lines, what lines are slow lines. We need to understand what juice is going through the overhead wires or the third rail next to us. We need to know the length for literally the length of the tunnels, the bridges, where the nearest. So there's a lot goes into your road learning as a guard. You take a good 2 or 3 months, especially on my route between London and Birmingham and Bedford and Bletchley, to just learn that. But you never stop learning. You're constantly learning. You need to know the length of the platform to ensure that your train fits and stuff like that. And they want to take all that away from us and just have us going through checking tickets, but take away the safety critical aspect, which would mean that if we was involved in an incident, we can't go trackside and we can't coordinate an evacuation unless the driver okays us to do that. At the minute, we've got the power to be able to evacuate people because we know what we're doing. We can stop trains. We know how to make that emergency call. They want to take that away from us. And then that means that a train can run without a conductor on board, which means if they haven't got a guard for the midnight 34 out of Euston at the minute, they have to cancel it. If we go to a stage where they don't need the guard, that'll run. But that midnight 34 is known as the vomit comet, and it's the vomit comet for a reason because there's a lot of drunk people on it and a lot of problems on there. But if there's no guard on there, I mean, we get sworn at all the time, and people say, "Oh, what's the point of having a guard?" Or "You're just a ticket collector," or something like that. I say, "Well, don't come and knock on my door when we're halfway between Leighton Buzzard and Bletchley and say someone's just half-inched my wallet. What are you going to do about it?" Because I won't be here, mate, because they'll do away with me, if you know what I mean. So it's really important to keep that presence on the train. But it also, for me, it's also about the safety aspects of what we call the PTI, the platform train interface. So when I'm dispatching a train, I'm watching the entire platform train interface. I'm watching people running late to the train. I'm aware I can hear people because I'm out on the platform. And then we tell the driver, we give him what we call the ready to start signal. And then the driver takes the train out of that. But all the time we're watching and we're stopping people falling down the side of a train. If there's any incident takes place, we can stop the train in an emergency. But we're aware of that because the cameras on the side only capture that last few feet from the edge of the platform to the edge of the train. And then when the train gets over, say, 5 miles an hour, it's still within the platform. However, those cameras have switched off. But at that time, the driver's watching the signal at the end of the platform. It's watching the signal beyond that. And it's just concentrating on taking the train forward. So we can't be expecting them to also be watching the platform train interface. So that's why we need to keep guards on the trains. We're doing a fantastic job. I'm just going to flick my light on, actually. It's got very dark all of a sudden. There we go. Sorry about that. So they want to take the role of the guard. Like I said, take away our safety critical duties. And then ultimately, that'll mean that they can run trains without guards on. And we can't have that. And we're not going to stand up for it. We're not going to let that go on. And you know, there's a lot of train conductors out there. We're very, very passionate about our jobs. So in a way, that's where we are with the national dispute. By the way, there's no pay offer on the table for the train operating companies. The attacks will be coming on the dispatch staff, the booking offices, the guards, anything to do with the railway, they want to modernise or get rid of. And they want to modernise it because they want to maximise their profits. And that's what we've got to be looking at. We're in an era now where we should be encouraging people off the roads. We've got a massive environmental disaster going on in this world. And people are driving in and out of London, and they're driving very short journeys between, towns which are 10, 15 miles apart. But there's no encouragement at the minute to bring them onto the railway system along the lines of we've got the most extortionate fare system out there. I've travelled in France and Germany and places like that, and the trains are clean. And this is by no fault of the staff, because they do an awesome job. Our cleaners, by the way, sometimes only have 5 minutes to clean a 12-car train when it arrives into London to when it goes back out. And that is no time at all. Within that 5 minutes, they've got to try and do a litter pick. There's no time to wipe the surfaces down or anything like that. So we're not encouraging people, because we're not offering them a decent fare system for a start, because they want to rip the passengers off. We're not offering them any type of luxury whatsoever. If you look at some of the rolling stock that we've got out there at the minute, it's 40 years old. If you look at the 319s that operate between Northampton and London Euston, they're past their sell-by date. If you go up north in the Northern Powerhouse, that's where they're dumping all the old stock. So there's no investment in the railway system, because actually no train operating company owns its own trains. They're owned by companies called Roscoe's, rolling stock operating companies, who are making a huge profit. And what they're doing is they're building the trains and then leasing them back to the train operating companies. A train operating company's only assets, believe it or not, are its staff. It doesn't own anything else. It doesn't own the stations. Network Rail own most of them. It doesn't own the tracks. It doesn't own its own stock. It's paying other people to supply it with things. So obviously, when they want to maximise a profit, the only thing they can do is to cut the staff. And that's what they're doing. They don't cut the managers at the top, or they don't cut the dividends. And that's why I believe in renationalisation of the railway, because it will regenerate the money that is earned from fares straight back into the railway system. It can be used as a not-for-profit organisation. We don't have to prop up the shareholders, which, by the way, are foreign governments. If you look, the reason that the train fares are so cheap in places like France and Germany and places like that is because they're taking money out of the British railway system to fund their own nationalised system. So your DB Schenker is an arm of the German government. Abellio is an arm of the Dutch government, and along those lines. So of course they can, in Brussels, I think it was, they had 2 guards on the train. We struggle to keep 1 on the train at the minute, if you know what I mean. So it just goes to show you the money is going out of this country. So if we renationalise, we can just regenerate that straight back in, and we can improve the tracks, we can improve the safety, we can improve the rolling stock that we've got. That's my belief why we should be renationalising. And we should be, as said earlier, touching on the buses, we should be renationalising those as well. My dad was a bus driver. I grew up flitting around on buses all day long, along those lines, old Bristol VRs and Leyland Nationals, if anyone's a bit of a bus spotter. But that's what I grew up travelling around on myself. And again, you've only got to look now at the decimation of the bus network. And it's not just in our rural areas where bus services are being cut. I live in Bletchley. I'm on the outskirts of Milton Keynes. The bus services in Milton Keynes are being absolutely decimated because they're not profitable. But they're not profitable because it's a and people like that are taking the money out and then filtering that back through, into their shareholders. So that's my stance on nationalisation. I worry about the future. I know this meeting was going to be about the future of the transport network. You'll have to excuse me, my washing machine's going in the background. But I'm really concerned about the future of our transport network, because there doesn't seem to be a busting lot of investment in it. And there doesn't seem to be any commitment to actually do what it should be doing. Like I said, we need to get cars off the road. We need to get more and more people using public transport. But if it's not reliable, I've got a bus service runs past every 12 minutes. But it's probably about every 24 minutes or every 36 minutes, because every bus in between is cancelled because they don't have the staff. They don't have the staff. And by the way, our Arriva members in Milton Keynes and across the Shires, all the way down to Luton, Hemel Hempstead, Aylesbury and stuff, they're also taking strike action at the moment because of their poor pay. People don't want to come into the industry anymore because the pay's so poor. And again, if it was nationalised and we were putting all of the profits that were made back in, we'll be able to give people a decent pay rise and be able to treat people fairly. And you'd have a pride as well, because I'm going to touch on something you've probably heard of called Great British Railway, which is the future, according to this government, of the railway. It's anything but the Great British Railway, because it doesn't include Scotland and it doesn't include Wales. So it's the Great English Railway. And the only thing that it's looking at doing is they're going to call it nationalisation, but you'll still have almost the franchising system within it, because it will still be companies operating within it, and they will still be taking profits out of it, albeit they will get a guaranteed profit. And if they make more money than that, good for them. But if they don't make as much money, here's your money anyway, you're still taking it. So there's going to be no commitment to actually improve the service and make it more reliable or anything like that. And this is why we're in the position that we're in now, because what they want to do is any new entrants coming into the railway, they want on a new contract, on a lower rate of pay, with Sundays as part of the working week, worse terms and conditions. And they've got to do that along the lines of if they want us all to work for Great British Railway, we've all got to be on the same contract. And just on West Midlands trains, where I work, I can tell you there's 3 different contracts for guards. So it's impossible. The only way to do it is to attack us now, beat us all down, impose new contracts under the fire and rehire, which you saw at P&O Ferries, which wasn't a fire and rehire. It was a fire and don't bother coming back. We're going to hire agency staff. And that's what they want to do. Because they've got to have everybody on the same contract under Great British Railways, because technically it'll be the one company. So and there was one of the faces of Grant Shapps who stood in Parliament and condemned P&O Ferries for employing 800 agency staff when they dumped our members. And then when we started going on strike, turned and said, "Oh, we're going to bring agency staff in to cover the rail workers." Well, Grant, you said that was illegal and they shouldn't have been doing that. So that's what we're up against, and we are fighting a government here. We're not fighting an individual train operating company, which is where it becomes really, really frustrating. So I don't know if I've covered everything that you want me to cover. I've gone on a bit of a rant. I don't write speeches. I just fire from the hip. I hope I've covered everything that you wanted me to cover. And if I haven't, hey, shoot some questions at me and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. You may not have covered everything, but that rant was brilliant.
Thank you.
I thought it was. I'm surprised that you may have got some notes, but most of that was obviously from the top of your head. That your passion and commitment to the railways, to the staff who work in the railways, to public transport more widely, just shines out from the screen. And thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions, comments, observations they want to make? Roy, Bob, Tony, Dave, please, this is your opportunity. Unmute yourselves and speak. Roy's got his hand up first. You need to unmute, Roy. You need to unmute yourself. That's it.
Can you hear me? Right.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
I think people know my political inclinations, so some of what I say might be a little bit provocative. But a few years ago, I went to France and went from Paris to forget the name of the suburb, driverless trains, no ticket office. Now was that negotiated or an imposition? Presumably, it was a negotiated scenario, but I don't know. So I'm posing the questions. I'm an international traveller, Wayne. So now I can boast. I've just come back from Sweden. Very different scenario. Guards, drivers, and staff on the platforms, etc. But everything automated. But when I went to get an automated ticket and had a problem, there was a member of staff there to help, very helpful. So there was a sort of backup thing. Now, there were 2 scenarios. There were those in between. In Belgium, my wife and I travelled right across Belgium as old age pensioners or senior citizens, and it cost us about, can't remember, about €8. There was none of this, as I see it, rubbish where you have to book up in advance. There are about 6 different fares to choose from, and if you miss a train, then you've got to pay the full price and so on, which is absolute nonsense to me. But that's the way British railways are run, which, you know, I'm repeating myself, absolute nonsense. But anyway, there are different scenarios, and one of the things that people always, not everybody, not always, but what people go on about always is, well, why should we subsidise the railways? And I think the point has to be constantly emphasised. It's an investment, because you're cutting down costs on the NHS through less pollution, less accidents, and it's a sensible investment. Uneconomic lines, so-called, are kept open, but they're not in the total scheme of things uneconomic. Now, you're in the middle of an industrial dispute. There are many of these issues that at the moment would seem to be a little bit peripheral, because, you know, I wouldn't say it's a life and death struggle, but it's a hell of a struggle you've got on your hands. What my contribution, without notes as usual, Paul, a little bit eclectic, but touching on one or two things that perhaps Wayne could come back on.
Yeah, Wayne, do you want
me to come back on that now?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, what people want to see, by the way, is a fully staffed railway. It gives people confidence. If you come to a train station, as you said, when you was in Sweden, there was enough staff, there was guards, there were people that were there to assist you. And that's what we need. And there are areas where there are driverless. There's areas, I mean, if you look at the tube network at the moment, there's vast areas where the driver is not in control. It's all automated going forward, but there is a driver on board to open and close the doors and be there in case of an emergency and stuff like that. But I think what gives people the confidence is seeing staff around, seeing that there's a guard on board the train, or seeing that there's ticket office staff, or that there is somebody there that is there to assist them when they do need the help, as you said, in the buying of the ticket. And you're right in saying subsidising the railway is an investment, and I touched on it when I first spoke about, you know, we're in an ecological nightmare at the moment with regard to what's going on with the planet, and we're trying to drive down you know, carbon emissions and getting people out of the cars and stuff like that. So investment in the railway where we can bring in more ecological types of transport in the trains and along those lines is an investment in the future. But we need to sustain that. It's no good just buying a fleet of trains and then running them into the ground over 20 years. As things evolve, we need to invest again, because the next generation of trains will come along where we're using things like the biodiesel in some areas and a lot more use. You know, we can cut down probably on the amount of electricity that we're drawing off the overhead power lines and use it a lot more. I'm not an engineer or a technician, so I wouldn't know how we would do anything like that. But it is an investment, and I understand, and you're right, where you've got to look at the other cuts that are going on. We can fund wars everywhere and bits and pieces like that, but we can't fund our own NHS. We can't get an appointment at the doctors, and the new health secretary saying it's great, you're only going to have to wait 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment now. Well, sometimes if I don't feel well, I want to see a doctor today or tomorrow, if you know what I mean. So yeah, what we've got to look at is what is the best model, either around Europe, or I've never been to Japan, but I see lots of things about the Japanese railway and it looks absolutely phenomenal. I don't know what they're doing down there, but what we've got to do is we've got to encapsulate all the good things that are going on in other countries around Europe and around the world. And we used to have a railway system that was a shining light of Great Britain. You know, people looked at what we did and went, that's the right thing to do. I won't talk about the Great British Railways or the British Railway Sandwich, because it wasn't the greatest invention out there or anything like that. But yeah, we need to move forward. I don't disagree with that. And we've got a lot of automation, I can't even say it, on the railway as it is. And we're happy to accept that, because like I said, if it makes our members' jobs that bit easier and it makes the railway that bit safer, we would be absolutely foolish not to take that on board. But I appreciate your input into that, Roy. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered your questions or not, but yeah, there we go. Thank you for your input.
Dave, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just picking up a point Wayne made and moving on to something else. I mean, I travelled extensively on railways in Japan for 2 months, and they are absolutely amazing. You know, every train runs not only to the minute, to the second. If the train is timed to pull out 5 minutes past 2, as soon as your watch comes round to 5 minutes past 2, the train starts to move. And when they arrive at their destination, there's immediately, from almost nowhere, a whole horde of cleaners appear. Trains are cleaned from top to bottom, including all the floors are washed, all the seats are wiped down. It's a truly impressive operation, and it's expensive, way cheaper than we do. But of course, largely it's a nationalised industry. Just moving on from that as a comment, there's a tremendous amount of public emotion at the moment about railways, the water industry, the energy industry, and particularly in relation to railways. Every survey you see seems to indicate that overwhelmingly the public are in favour of a nationalised railway system. Now, obviously you were making this case in your various discussions that you have with the government, but what's their reaction when you just throw, well, this is what the public are telling you, the public are telling everybody. So how can you continue with an operation like we are now, which is pretty much fragmented? And if you call it a supply chain, there's a number of different people involved in the supply chain, and they're all taking profit out on the way through, aren't they? With regard to your comment about saving electricity supply, I mean, the answer to that is within regenerative braking on electricity trains, but that relies on the Ruscoes, of course, supplying new trains that are equipped with regenerative braking. And whether there's any money in that for them, I don't know enough in detail about it. But if there's no money in it for them, then they're going to do it, are they? And so it's more a case of how does the government react to this situation with public surveys when they're faced with that sort of feedback?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is we're banging the drum a lot more because we've actually now got we're doing meetings like this, but we're also doing the Enough is Enough, the People's Assembly. We've finally got a platform that we're able to shout, because we've believed in nationalisation ever since they privatised it. And let's not forget that the government we've got in place at the minute are the ones that privatise it. They privatised everything, and now everything that got privatised, everyone's going, well, actually, we want it back into public hands, But what you found, and I'm really going to fly the flag for the RMT here, because we sat on the going to go slightly off a tangent and then come back, if that's okay. So we sat on this ballot for quite some time because we knew what was coming, and we had to wait for the right time to ballot our members. And we balloted 42,000 members across Network Rail and the train operating companies. And I'm not exaggerating when I said in the last few days we had sleepless nights of going, are we going to get this over the line? We knew that we'd get a yes vote, but the biggest issue for us was getting the mandate of the 40% return of papers. And we were concerned that we wouldn't get that. When the numbers came through in the boardroom that evening was one of the best nights of my life, I can tell you, because as the numbers were coming in, we were going, wow, we haven't just got across the line, we've smashed the anti-trade union laws here. And what that showed us was there was a confidence in our members to take industrial action, but they realised that the time to take it was now, and they voted in numbers. What that then did, I think it gave a shot in the arm, and I'm not going to say we are the catalyst for the whole movement at the moment, but I think it gave a lot of other trade unions a bit more confidence to go, if they can do it, we can do it. Because I've spoken at Unite meetings and Unison meetings, and I've said, how did you do it? And I said, it was a lot of bloody work, but what we did was we got our activists involved, and we sent our activists into every workplace, and we got them to talk to our reps. And we said to the reps, you're elected reps of this union. You've got 60 guards, we'll say, at Bletchley, and there's 4 reps. You've only got to speak to 12 or 13 each and get the point across. And we broke it down into smaller and smaller and smaller numbers. We held mass meetings, and we got the message across. And because we managed to get that across, and we went on the TUC march and the support, we got clapped through the centre of London. It was unbelievable. Trade unions were stood on the side of the road, other unions, and just clapping us. It was like we'd won the World Cup and was bringing it home or something, you know. It was absolutely fantastic. And it's something I've never experienced. But we heard the speeches from Dave Ward and people like that at the TUC at this march in central London. And it's really given a shot in the arms. And other unions have gone, well, if the RMT, and other union members as well, by the way. And when we hold our picket lines, we've got as many flags from other trade unions as we have from our own trade unions, because they all want a piece of the action. The Fire Brigade Union come down to our strikes at Bletchley and went, we're going to be pushing the FBU. We want strike action because we're not happy with how we're being treated. The nurses, I spoke at Colchester Trades Council a couple of weeks back, and 3 separate teaching unions were there going, we're going to push the button. And we're doing it because we've watched what you've done. So that's now given us the platform, because people are saying to us, why don't you ever get anything out in the newspapers? Because all the newspapers want to do is report about work-shy, lazy, greedy union members. The right-wing press hate us. The only newspaper we can get any stories out is literally the Morning Star. They're the only ones that will print anything positive about us. So we have now got public platforms where we're going out and we're spreading the word about nationalisation. And because people are looking at the energy crisis that's going on and going, well, we had British Electric years ago and we had British Gas years ago when they were owned by the government. Why aren't we getting that? But it's given us also the opportunity to really force in. And the government are uncomfortable about it. Then this government are not going to nationalise. Like I said, their idea of nationalisation is calling us all Great British Railways and giving us one uniform and going, well, there we go, you're all one railway company. But we know inside we're still going to be 12, 13, 14 different railway companies with different bosses that don't talk to each other or anything like that. So we don't just, it shouldn't just be the RMT that are pushing this. It should be other trade unions. We know the CWU are really, you know, pushing issues on our behalf as well. We've got our parliamentary group. We've got a parliamentary group of MPs who are constantly pushing this. And like I said, it's not just the railway network that we're pushing for nationalisation, it's the bus network, because if you think the railways are bad, dealing with Stagecoach and Arriva and people like that is even worse. We've got depots that are 3 or 4 miles apart from each other that have got totally different terms and conditions, different bargaining units, different rates of pay, and yet they drive the same buses and the same routes. It's absolutely diabolical. That's just Stagecoach on its own. So yeah, we really need, I think whilst we've got the support that we're getting from the working class, not just the trade union movement, by the way, but the working class in general, we've got to really get on this and get them to start lobbying their MPs. I've got 2 Tory MPs in Milton Keynes North and Milton Keynes South, and I think one of them's blocked me now because he's sick to death of getting messages from me, because I keep barracking him about the fact he voted to dump everyone's sewage into the beaches that we was all trying to enjoy through the summer. And I know full well that when he stands for election, we'll certainly be turning up at his meetings and barracking him there. And that's what we need to be doing, is putting pressure on these MPs, because we elect them and they should be there to work for us. And they're doing anything but working for us. And by the way, this man claims a lot of money in expenses. He lives on an estate probably about 3 or 4 miles from where I live, yet he stays in London all week. I work not far from where he does, but I travel in every single day along those lines. So, and he won't, if he gets off the same train as me at Bletchley, he won't walk out the door with me at the same time. And I'm a bit nasty at times because I hang around at the front of the station for 10 or 15 minutes just so as he won't come out. But yeah, you're right. And you've got to look at the countries where we've got the nationalised rail systems, and they are far better than the ones that we're producing in this country. And the irony, just one very quick point on that, the only government in the world that cannot bid for a railway franchise is the British government. Anyone else anywhere in the world can bid to run a railway franchise. The only time the British government do anything is when they take the keys back, they look after it temporarily, and then sell it on to the next biggest bidder. And that's a disgrace. But we are fully pushing for nationalisation, and it worries me as well. Even though it was in, I think it was the '97 manifesto agreement of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer seems to be coming away from the idea of nationalisation now, and we've got a political party there in the Labour Party, and if we've got any Labour Party supporters on here, I apologise if I offend you, but they are not representing the working classes as we speak. They were born out of the working class movement, and when Keir Starmer's telling his own MPs that they're not allowed to come and join us on picket lines, I find that quite shameful. But we've got a lot of our local councillors in Milton Keynes. Pete Marsland, who's the leader of Milton Keynes Council, comes down. He supports all the picket lines, not just the RMT ones, but the CW. I see him on the CWU ones for Openreach and stuff like that. So absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much. Tony, you wanted to?
Yes, I'm not muted, am I?
No, you're not.
No. Two things really. One is, can you say something more about Mick Lynch, the new star of the, of the people in a way? What's your experience of him? What's he about? How did he get there? And what's his, what formed him? He's a fan, he's just been such a disruption on so much of the the feeble things that pass for media in this country. He communicates, he explains, he gets his message across. It's very striking. So that's one thing. And the other thing is just a comment that it seems to me that there started a process of privatizations that goes back to Thatcher and the 80s. Now, that has that neoliberal sort of taking down of the state and replacing it with private organizations has not been challenged. It's not been challenged for 40 years. Not really. Bits of sort of comments from time to time, but essentially politics has rolled on without challenge, and to some extent it's the fruits of that economics that has now got us to where we are now. So and it's very interesting, I think, that in this country it's workers' movements, trade unions that have now set up beginnings of challenge, beginnings of an alternative after 40 years of that increasingly sort of ingrained aspect of our lives. And that has been very important for many people. So two things. One is about Mick Lynch. What's he about? And the second thing is this a beginning, the Churchillian, is it the beginning of the end of neo-capitalism, or is it just the beginning of the beginning, or, whatever Churchill said, one of the bollocks he said.
He said something about fighting them on the beaches, didn't he? Or?
No, it's a different comment. It's about the beginning of the beginning of the begin. So so just Mick Lynch, what's he about? And is this the start
beginning of the end?
Start of the end of neoliberalism, capitalism.
Okay, right. First point, if we were to fight them on the beaches, we couldn't anyway, because it's all full of sewage that they voted to dump on there. So I'm not going to go fighting anyone on the beaches, to be fair. I would love to be able to say it's the beginning of the end of neo-capitalism. I think politics in this country over many, many years has just merged into a centre ground, and there's no sort of extreme entity within the political system that we've got at the moment in any type of political party, really, that are willing to take on the ruling classes of this country. I'm not saying we start a revolution, we start pulling down buildings and stuff like that and arming our members, but I think it is generating, as per I said when I was talking about the nationalisation, we're now getting a platform to actually highlight what's going on, and actually showing people that for, as you said, for 40 years, they've been brainwashed into thinking that capitalism is the way forward. And all capitalism is doing is making the rich even richer and the poor even poorer. And you've only got to look at what's being proposed at the minute. They're freezing the pay of millions of people across this country, doctors, nurses, post office workers, rail staff. And then our business secretary or chancellor, I can't remember who's in what position these days, announces they're lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses, and we're going to have a trickle-down economy. Well, there's lots of things that if you drop it at the top,
it's a piss-down economy, not a trickle-down. It's a piss-down.
And they're
pissing on us.
You know, if you want to re-energize this economy, start putting money in the pockets of the working classes to be able to go to the supermarkets and buy things. Put money in their pockets that they can go to the cinema and regenerate the economy. And let's regenerate it from the bottom up for once. You know, because we're sick to death of seeing the money going into the pockets of the rich, and that never. You know, Jacob Reed-Moss is one. I just hear his voice and. He's got a voice that I want to punch, let alone a face I'd like to punch, to be fair. But he's got, and there's been no challenge to it. But I think now the working class have had enough. This is the first time. I'm 46. I always say I'm probably one of the last generations that saw mass industrial action with the miners, the car workers, the rail staff. You know, we're talking late 70s into the early 80s, and we've got 2 or 3 generations after me that have never seen a mass movement of the trade union, and they're seeing it now. And we find it really hard. You know, I was going on every recruitment drive that we had to encourage guys to come and join, and they'd all turn around and say, "Oh, well, I've been told it's the best protection out there. You're my insurance policy." And I said, well, we might ask you to give us a little bit of something back every now and then in taking strike action or something like that. And I think what we're doing now is not just union members, but the working class have had enough. They're looking that their bills are going through the roof. I'm on a couple of Facebook groups where people are begging for food and going, I can't afford to even put electricity in my meter. And yet we're supposed to be one of the superpowers in the world. And I saw an ironic meme earlier, and it was some police officer talking, saying, we need to clear the funeral route of all the homeless people to allow people to sleep overnight to mourn the Queen as she goes past. And I saw another picture of a memorial to the Queen on a bus shelter with a homeless guy sleeping next to that bus shelter. And that epitomises where we are. If you go out the front of Milton Keynes station, the amount of homeless people out there. Why are we having people that are on the same wage as me, £30,000 or £1,000 a year, having to go to food banks? People were saying it's a disgrace the food banks were closed on Monday. I'll tell you what the biggest disgrace is, that we got food banks in the first place. That's the disgrace, not that they were closed for one day, but we got them. So I would love to say it is the end of neo-capitalism. I don't think we'll, you know, I'm not too sure I'll see the end of any of that in my lifetime. But what we've got to do now is get our younger generation, and our youth movement within the RMT, by the way, are very militant, and they're doing an absolutely fantastic job. And what we've got to ensure that we do as the older generation is pass down our experiences to them, and they are the ones that are going to have to take the fight forward. Because unfortunately, you know, I'm looking at quite a bleak future for me and probably for my children. But we've got to hand the baton onto them, but we've got to give them the ammunition to be able to bring down this type of politics, if you know what I mean. It's not easy, but we've got to use everything that we've got, and people like yourselves who are also either experienced trade unionists or have got, you know, some idea of a socialist society that we want to bring forward. But we've got to equip our younger generation to be able to go ahead and do that, as we do when they're all happy to, you know, do things about the environment, but there's other things that we need to be doing as well, you know, and it all ties into one.
What about Mick Lynch? Come on.
I'm just about to come on to Mick Lynch.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Mick Lynch, the poster boy of the trade union movement. And if I had £1 for every time someone said to me, I wish Mick Lynch was my general secretary, I'd have retired a few weeks ago. Mick is brilliant. I'm not blowing smoke up his backside, and I'm not just saying it in case he watches this video, by the way, because he's told me off on a few occasions, and Mick's also got that other side to him. Mick has been I think he's been an absolute revelation. We actually took a decision as an NEC about 2 weeks into the dispute to pull Mick out of the public for a couple of weeks, because it was becoming the Mick Lynch show, and we needed to concentrate on what was actually, you know, there was all the memes of Mick, you know, beating up politicians, and, you know, loads of videos, and there's T-shirts coming out with Mick Lynch's face on and stuff like that, and it's good. But Mick is actually a former blacklisted trade unionist. He's many years ago. I don't remember much about his distant past, if you know what I mean. I know he was blacklisted, which really got him going. He worked in the building industry. He took, like the Shrewsbury 24 was taking industrial action and stuff like that. Was basically blacklisted. Was really then got going. He was born in Paddington, grew up in West London, always had that eye of, you know, a fair society and so on and so forth. And he's brought that forward. And Mick actually held the post that I'm currently sat in now. So I'm not saying I'm following in his footsteps or anything like that, but, you know, he worked his way up. He went to Eurostar. He's a qualified electrician. He went to Eurostar in the fleet maintenance depot there, where he took on our European passenger services branch, which has over 1,000 members in. He revitalized that branch. He brought so many members into the RMT, and he got them. They are one of the best organized branches we've got, by the way, in the entire country. He did that as the branch chair. He then came on the National Executive Committee, where he held the position that I currently hold. Did a great job for the London and Anglia region, and he then went on to become the Assistant General Secretary. But you knew he was always going to be a General Secretary. He's got that demeanour about him. And the thing with Mick is he doesn't get flustered. He listens to the question, but he processes what's being said, and he processes the answer. So it looks like he's coming back really quick. And he doesn't speak off the notes very often. He quite often has our little press officer, John Millington, stood next to him, just staring at him and stuff like that. But I think with Mick, the reason that he is so popular is he is 100% honest in what he says. And there's no, he gives the answer to the questions that people that are asking him don't necessarily want everyone to hear. You know, and I don't know if you saw him take down, I think it was Kay Burley, when she was trying to push him into, were we going to use some sort of violence on a picket line? And he was outside juicing, and our pickets were outside, and she said something about a picket line, and what are they going to do? And he went, well, what are they doing over there? They're picketing. We're asking people not to go to work. And she's going, well, what if people go to work? Well, we'll picket them and ask them not to. And she was trying to say, we're going to punch somebody on the picket line, which we're never going to do. And then he said something about, she was obviously leading to the violence that we saw in the miners' strike. And he said, well, does it look like the miners' strike? You know, and there's blokes stood behind him with a cup of coffee and waving an RMT flag. So Mick will lay it on, and he's not scared. He's not scared of anyone. He is not flustered by anyone whatsoever. And he'll take people on, but he takes them on because he's got a very good knowledge. And Mick can sit in our boardroom and he'll refer back to a decision that was made in the boardroom, you know, in 2006 ago. When I was on the NEC, I remember he's got an absolute stack of knowledge up there. He's a great bloke. And even away from the trade union movement, if you ever just go for a pint with him, he is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, if you know what I mean. He's very militant. He knows what he wants to achieve. And I'm going to say he's the best thing that's happened to the RMT for a very long time. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to serve on the national executive with him, because I'm learning a lot off him, if you know what I mean. And anyone that's working with Mick, it rubs off on you. It really does. But yeah, he's just an all-round good guy. I've not met anyone yet who's got anything bad to say about him. And the fact that Grant Shapps didn't want to phone him up was because Grant Shapps was quaking in his boots at the thought of having to take Mick Lynch on. When he's seen Mick take down all these so-called, you know, top journalists that roast many politicians and tie them up in knots, and Mick comes out of it leaving them in a quivering heap, live on TV or anything like that, you know, it's no wonder why people don't want to engage with him. And I will say, I believe he is filming tonight for Have I Got News For You, which is going out tomorrow night. So if you've got half hour or an hour tomorrow night, I'd suggest watching that, because I think that's going to be a good episode, to be fair.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for that. Dave, you wanted to say something, to come back, I think, or to say something new.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems which a lot of people don't seem to understand in terms of our public services and privatized industries is that, as we are appearing to do in the near future, we're going to put a lot of public money into these through quantitative easing. And the way trickle down works in that situation is the trickle down goes into the company, and if that is then, as they largely are, owned by overseas countries and overseas public, that money then goes straight out of the country, and all that does is create inflation. The only way you can use quantitative easing and avoid inflation is if the money stays in the country. And the only way it's going to stay in the country is if, as you say, it goes down to the people who are actually spending the money in the country, which are the likes of the people here, and the general people who will then go and spend it, hopefully, within businesses that are then going to circulate the money within the country. Otherwise, all it does is create inflation and just makes the bloody situation worse. Now, that's basic economics, and I just don't understand why the government don't get that. That if you then basically create money through quantitative easing, and then just from the Bank of England, it then passes to the government, and then the government passes it to Aviva or whoever. All the profit associated with that does is then just goes out of the country, and the whole bloody thing is just self-defeating. And I find it very difficult to understand how we can still move forward with exactly the same philosophy that we had done for certainly the last decade. By the way, there's a number of ex-Labour Party members on the screen. I don't know if there are any actual Labour Party members at all, actually Labour Party officials. So I think that sort of gives you some idea. The other problem we have is about lobbying our MPs. Our MP is a guy you might have heard of called Peter Bowe, who is on the right wing of the right wing, and lobbying him is
waste of time.
Yeah, he's just simply not interested. This is the guy to toss up between joining UKIP or joining the Tory Party. That sort of places him politically. And if he doesn't like what you make a point to him about or ask him a question about, he just doesn't bother to answer you. It's water back. So I don't know quite what else we can do as far as that's concerned. The last point I was going to make is picking up a bit of what you said is sorry.
Dave, you're beginning to break up a bit. So you might want to switch off your picture and speak.
Okay, how do I do that?
Just stop video.
Video. Okay. I've got a strong signal here, so I don't know quite.
We can hear you speaking.
Okay, but the picture's. Yeah. I mean, I would just mention the words general strike. There are so many trade unions now who are going in the same direction you are. How much does it take for the TUT to finally sort of take notice of what their members are telling them and start to get organised along those lines? Because I don't see any bloody alternative. You think of that,
Dave?
Yeah.
I think we've lost you, Dave.
I stopped talking for a minute. That's right. Well, I just throw it back to Wayne to respond.
Yeah. So for me, the TUC have been anything but a united front on the trade union movement for a very long time. They seem to be quite ineffective, to be fair. And what we're looking at doing, or what I see, and it's a shame that we're having to do it, but as individual trade unions, we're having to talk to each other to try and get a coordinated strike action going on. Hence the fact, if you look on the 1st of October, we've got CWU out, ASLEF, RMT, so on and so forth. And as more trade unions get their ballots in line, I think we need to have a joined up approach to taking certain dates all together and taking the fight to the government, and showing that it's every single angle, every part of this country, every type of worker has had enough, and we're going to unite. And we are, if we have to march on London, if we have to march in the major cities, you know, it's all very London centric, but you know, we got major cities in Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh and places like that. And let's coordinate days of action where all the union members, we don't just stand on picket lines. At a certain part of the day, we go and march on a certain area of that town or that city or something like that. The TUC was cancelled a couple of weeks back, or a week or so ago, because obviously they cancelled it for the period of national mourning. I'm aware there were 2 resolutions going to the TUC which were calling for coordinated strike action. And as you know, with regard to the anti-trade union laws, you know, it's illegal to take that type of action, but there's a lot of laws that they break as well. And I think if we're going to do this as a trade union movement, we're going to have to at some stage take a hit and just go, do you know what, you're going to have to take us all on at exactly the same time, because we've had enough. But what we need to be doing now is getting all the general secretaries together at some stage, having a chat, whether that's over a pint, whether it's over a coffee or whatever than that, and say, let's get one date in mind as a starting point where everybody goes out, and we all go out on that day and we bring the country to a stand and we say, go and challenge us in court then. Because this is what we had with ASLEF. I believe ASLEF was saying that we can't coordinate with them. We've now coordinated, or they couldn't coordinate with us. We've put that strike action on the same day as ASLEF. We've not yet had a legal challenge to that. I'm sure if there was a legal reason that we couldn't do it, they'd have either put the challenge in by now, or they're just not confident that that will go over the line. But at some stage, I'm all in favour of a general strike. I'm all in favour of bringing this country to an absolute stand and saying to this government, these are the people that you've been elected to represent, even though I never voted for you, even though the vast majority of us didn't vote for you. And by the way, while we'll talk about anti-trade union laws, I don't think there's an MP in this country that would have been elected if we actually put the anti-trade union laws into a general election, because they would not make they wouldn't make the mandates that we have to, you know, the hoops that we have to skip through just to get industrial action on. So I'm all in favour of a general strike. I'm very wary about the law being against us and stuff like that. But whilst the mood in the country at the minute is there, we've got to embrace that. I think the nurses are balloting as we speak. And if we could get people like the nurses and the teachers on side to also take strike action with us. I mean, Mick, going back to Mick Lynch, you know, he said at that TUC march, you know, as an entire unit, as a movement, we are unstoppable. And we've not been able to say that for many years. But I think if we all unite and we all take action, they're going to have to budge. And what we also need to be targeting, and I take on board your point about your local MP, because my MPs are the same. I send letter after letter and I get a generic reply back, which is just the government line, you know, and I've campaigned locally. We've got a landfill at the end of my road. We were fighting against that and the MP did nothing about it. The local councillors did. We lost the fight, by the way. We got a gas transfer station being built 500 or 600 yards down the road from me. We're campaigning against that. Again, our MP is doing nothing in our area to back the residents. But he's only got and I say only, he's got a majority of around about 8,000 people, which has grown over the last couple of general elections. But I think any MP at the minute that's got a majority of under 10,000, if there's a decent candidate, is there for the picking. And if you can, whilst we've got this movement going, and this is why Theresa May didn't want to call a snap general election, by the way, because her MPs were saying, Boris has made such a hash of it for the last 18 months, 2 years. We're really unpopular out there in the streets. We've seen a couple of by-elections, which the Lib Dems and so on, and you know, has been picked up, and Tory MPs have been picked off. And I've already said to my MP Ian Stewart here, I suggest you go and find another safe seat, because your seat of Milton Keynes South is no longer a safe seat. We've got a great candidate from the Labour Party who I'm going to support, and we'll put everything behind her. But I honestly think, with everything that's going on, and it annoys me with the Labour Party that they're not jumping on this. They should be flying the flag for the working classes now and going, oh, we give it a pay rise. We wouldn't attack this. We wouldn't attack that. and uniting the working class and forcing them into calling it. And the reason that Boris didn't go immediately is because we didn't have an effective opposition to hold him to account. And I think his own MPs didn't knife him in the back when they had the opportunity, because he was doing enough. It was bungling Boris. And all of a sudden, when Partygate really started to explode, a few of them MPs were looking at their majorities and going, my mailbox is getting full every day of people complaining about Boris Johnson. My mailbox is getting full every day of people complaining about their energy bills. I'm 18 months away from a general election, and I'm getting more people complaining about what we're doing as opposed to people that are praising us for what we're doing. And I think there's a lot of MPs at the minute are looking over their shoulders and going, that 8,000 majority is very achievable, very achievable. We've got to get the apathy. A lot of people don't vote, and we've got to get the apathy in voting overturn that. We've got to encourage people to go out and vote, because everyone's complaining about the state the country's in at the minute. But if you didn't vote, have you actually got a right to complain? Because by not voting, you allowed these idiots in. Because we know full well, and it's the same in a trade union election or any election, you know, you will mobilise the people that fully support you. And then you try to pick off like the hangers on or something like that. But if you know you've got enough people that support you to get you over the line, you don't need to go out and appeal to the non-voters or anything like that. And what we need to do is get out to these non-voters and go, if you want your energy bills to come down, you need to change this government, because they're not going to do anything about it. And we've seen it with the price of fuel, by the way. It's no dearer now to extract a barrel of oil than it was probably about 2 years ago. Yet the price has gone up from 90 whatever pence it was maybe 2 years ago to 190 something now. But once it goes up, it never comes back down. And you know, we've got to target these majorities. So as much as we can lobby our MPs, they're never going to agree with us. But what we need to be lobbying with now is saying, you do realise the working classes in your area have had enough of you, and we are going to vote you out. We're not telling you you might get voted out. We are going to vote you out. And and start putting let's turn the gas up under them. Well, not too much, because we can't afford the gas at the moment. But yeah, let's get them going a little bit.
Bob, did you want to? You haven't said anything yet. Did you want to say anything? You don't have to. But
yeah, I do. Yeah, I saw Ken Loach on a Zoom thing saying that basically the TUC, all the organisations have got to rally around the TUC and they've got to unite. Is that a feasible thing with some of the more right-wing unions? You know what I mean? And going forward, I'll leave that with you to have a word.
Yeah, I mean, what we've got to do is get in there and lobby these general secretaries now. And I don't know if you know what's going on with Tessa. They was going to merge with something called the Boilermen's Association of America or something, which was a very right-wing organisation in America. That's all fallen through, by the way. But yeah, we've got to work as a trade union movement. Those are the militant unions have got to start dragging these splinter unions, if you know what I mean, into the fight and saying to them, you know, you've got members, they're working class members, or they should be working class members. We've got to unite. This is our one shot at this. If you ask me, if we get this wrong, what's going to happen to the trade union movement really worries me, if you know what I mean. But we've got to unite every single union that we can to the best of our ability. And we've got the big unions on side at the moment with Unite, with the CWU, with Unison. The RMT is not a big union. We punch well above our weight. We've only got 83,000 members. You know, we punch well above our weight. But what we need to do is use the likes of Mick to start influencing these other general secretaries and their national executive committees and working as a one. I'm no fan of the TUC. They've not been effective enough for me. And I think it's not that we're forming a breakaway Congress or anything like that. But I think we need to get the top general secretaries in this country together and then start and dragging the other ones back in as well, and giving them the confidence, by the way, and saying, you know, if you want better for your members, you're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we'll crush you as much as we're going to aim to crush this government.
Yeah.
I'm going to start to wind things up now. We're now approaching 8:30, and I want to try and finish at 8:30 if that's okay. I mean, you've been under a lot, you know, you've been speaking now, Wayne, and responding now for getting on for an hour and a half, which which I'm sure you can cope with, but it's nevertheless, we need to start to draw it to a conclusion. Just a couple of points myself that I'd like to make. The first question is, in terms of tactics for the dispute, has there been any discussion about, say, for example, refusing to collect fares, or opening the barriers so that you actually bring that we do have some of the highest fares in the world. I mean, certainly the line from Nottingham to London via Leicester and Wellingborough and what have you, I'm told is the most expensive train line in the world per ticket. You're talking to going 60 miles from Wellingborough to London at peak time is well over 100 quid. In other countries, to go, when I was in Germany recently and told them that's what we were paying, they were shocked that a railway line could be so expensive. Particularly as in Germany, they introduced you could go anywhere for €9 or something. I know that's ended now, but you could travel the whole of Germany for €9. And that was incredibly popular. And in Spain, they also introduced a similar, very cheap scheme. As part of the dispute, could win over passengers by the RMT saying, you know, today we're not going to go on strike today, but we're just going to open the barriers. We're going to refuse to repair the ticket machines that are broken down. Do you know what I mean? I just wondered if there's been any discussions which might bring on board passengers. Today's going to be free fare day. You know, we're going to work, and that will hit the companies really hard. So that's the first question. Yep. Second, so that's tactic. Second observation, I had a disabled friend of mine who wanted to come to tonight's meeting but couldn't. He's a wheelchair user, and he was saying that guards are so important for people with mobility difficulties, wheelchair users, blind or what have you. So there's a real powerful argument about maintaining guards, people at stations, but it's just simply on the grounds of disabled people are very vulnerable without that kind of support. So that's just an observation. And then thirdly, unfortunately, I travelled with P&O recently because I got tickets from well over 12 months ago that cost us getting on for 300 quid. And I wasn't going to allow P&O to have that for free. So we did travel P&O, but I'm not going to do it again. And I've told P&O through their response, you know, they asked us how our journey went. And actually it was crap. The whole journey on P&O, the toilets hadn't been cleaned. The catering was awful. The ferry, the organising of the ferry on and off was lousy. And all the people that I noticed working now on P&O, certainly the Dover-Calais route, were all from India and the Far East. And how were they recruited? Do you know how they because I think RMT organised P&O staff, doesn't it? Yeah. How did they recruit these people? Those three questions or points.
No worries. I'll comment on the P&O one first because it's the last one. So what happened with P&O is they decided. I mean, the cross-channel market is cutthroat anyway. There's not a lot of money to be made. They had to make some sort of money. DP World, who were the owners, who own all these massive sporting events that everyone loves and so on and so forth. In fact, myself and a few of the other NEC members occupied their headquarters in London a few months ago and were pretty much, well, almost arrested in doing so. So what they did there was, this was long in the planning of P&O, and we've actually got a former P&O worker on our National Executive Committee called Dale Kember, and he took the same Zoom or text message, WhatsApp call, sat in the offices with us, sacking him on the day. And we just sat there and went, wow, we've never seen anything like this. So what they did was they recruited through this wonderful agency, which has an office, I believe, in Malta. and the ships are not flagged in the UK, so therefore they've got like Maltese flags or flags from the Caribbean, which means they only have to abide by the laws of the country of the flag that they fly. So you look at that, they've got ships which are flagged in Scandinavia, and if you travel on those boats between Scotland and Ireland or Liverpool and Ireland, they're actually Scandinavian crews on there. The ones that are on the cross-channel ferries, as you say, yeah, are Indian crews. But they recruited them, you know, because a lot of seafarers just work for agencies, and they'll flip between. They'll go where the work is. And if I don't know if you remember at the time that they impounded a few of their boats because they were not safe to sail, because the guys couldn't even speak English. They couldn't show you where to go for a fire assembly point. They couldn't even show you where the firefighting equipment was, let alone they being trained how to use it. So, you know, the Coast Guard agency did what they did to impound them for as long as they could. But obviously, the longer they were on board, the more they got used to the ships, the more they were shown things. And if you want to see how despicably our members were treated, by the way, all of their belongings on those ships, because even though they might do a 12-hour shift, they do a couple of weeks on, a couple of weeks off. So they never left the ship. They slept on board the ship and then did their shifts. Their belongings, their personal belongings, pictures of their families, mobile phones, were just dumped into wheelie bins and skips on the docks of Dover. And they've never seen that. They've never seen any of their belongings. You know, these are the people that we dealt with. So basically, they were recruited. DP World knew what they were doing, started recruiting long beforehand, and they must have done it because the boat that was in Hull at the time, our regional organizer Gary Jackson was on board it, and they sent security staff there to literally rip our members off those boats and then march replacement crew up the stairs onto those boats. So they've been recruited long before. This was something long in the planning, and they hit the button one day, was all condemned. It's going to be illegal. No one's been charged. No one's been prosecuted or nothing like that. Maybe DP World have donated a little bit of money to the Conservative Party, who knows, but they turned a blind eye to it. So that's what they did on P&O. And it was a form of fire and rehire, and it's what we're facing in many places now in fire and rehire is, if you don't like the contract, you're out the door. If you want to remain here, we're going to sack you on that contract and we're going to impose this contract on you. Disabled passengers, absolutely correct. Every train is fitted with a disabled ramp. Every platform should have a disabled ramp on it. And when the stations are unstaffed or there's no one to take them off, it's the guard's job to put the passenger on, take them off, make them comfortable, phone ahead for any assistance, so on and so forth. So the removal of the guard takes away that safety net for our disabled passengers. What you'll find then is we could put somebody onto a train platform at 1 o'clock in the morning of an unstaffed station and leave them to fend for themselves to get, because we can't delay the train. The train has to go on. They haven't got the 10 minutes for us to move this disabled passenger from the platform across to the front of the station. And if you look, Southern have just admitted, or is it Go via Thameslink? One of them has admitted to breaches of the 20, I forget what act it is now. It's absolutely
the Equality Act.
The Equalities Act.
2010.
They've admitted to breaches of that because they're running driver-only operation trains with no guard on board, with disabled passengers that can't get on and off at unstaffed stations. So they're breaching the act, but they're not the only one. We've highlighted about 5 of the train operating companies that operate under driver-only operation are breaking this act. And you've got to ask, what are the government doing about it? Going on to your other point about the let's have a free fare day. It's illegal.
Is it? Okay.
We couldn't do it under the anti-trade union laws. So when we ballot for strike action, or what we call action short of strike, we have to say what that action short of strike will be. So if I put a resolution in for strike action, that's simple. We're going to ask you to take a day's worth of strike action. We don't need to go any further than that. When we do action short of a strike, we have to state action short of a strike in the means of a rest day, or could include a rest day, overtime ban, whatever it is, refusal to take a ticket machine. We have to state what we're doing, because if all of a sudden we do that, they'll go, you're breaking the law because you didn't state that that's the action that you was going to take. What they could do, and I'm trying to think what talk we had it on recently, is if we refused to collect fares on that day, they could take us to court and sue us for the loss of earnings on that day and go, you didn't tell us that you were going to do it. It's illegal to do it. We lost £600,000 on that day. Therefore, the union are now liable to pay that back. And the High Court will go, damn right, let's crush those trade unions, if you know what I mean. So that would be something that they would look at doing, would be to use the law against us. And they've threatened it. They've threatened us. We had to pull our industrial action on cross-country trains over a technicality. And it's ludicrous. The law is not with us when it comes to the trade unions, and we'd love to do, hit them hard. But what you've also got to realise, the government will just give them the money anyway. They gave them the money for the drop off in tickets that they weren't selling through the COVID period. If we was to do something like that, even as we speak now, where the numbers are not up to the full extent, the government are subsidising what they're losing in fares along those lines. So even if we hit them by £600,000, all we're going to do is hit ourselves by £600,000 because it's going to come out the public pot. Love to be able to do something like that, but other countries don't have the draconian trade union laws that we've got, unfortunately, which really tie our hands. So I hope that answers that question.
It does. Thank you. I mean, I was just thinking that it might be worth threatening to do it, and seeing, and in a sense, the public will be aware that that's what you're proposing or thinking of, but then you withdraw it because you say we've been advised it's illegal and blah blah. We'd love to support passengers who are ripped off by all these fares. So the tactic becomes the threat of it, which is withdrawn. So you don't actually have to do it to win. And Mick Lynch,
I'll float it as an idea.
And Mick Lynch would be wonderful before the cameras, advocating that we would love to have cheaper fares for passengers and to what have. Anyway, it's just an idea.
I'll float it as an idea next week when I see Mick again.
But I think any further points, last minute things before I kind of. There's a couple of notices I want to give before we finally wind up the meeting. But has anybody got any final things to put to Wayne? No, Wayne, you. Oh, there's always one, Bob. You're muted, Bob. You're muted.
Hang on. Right. I just want to pass our good wishes to the RMT, basically, and all power to their elbow. That's
appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we all endorse that, Bob, and I'm pleased you said it.
And we appreciate your support.
Yeah, and is there? I mean, ISW has a tradition that when we have speakers, we make donations to a suitable cause from our funds. Is there a fund that that we could make a donation to? That we have a solidarity fund which members of our branch can come to if they're struggling. So it would be great if you did make a donation. It's entirely up to you. It would be much appreciated. We would keep it local, that it would only go into the Bletchley and Northampton branch, so it wouldn't get swallowed up into the bigger thing. So any donation that if you did choose to make, I'll pass on the account details, and that will be distributed amongst members in Northampton and Bletchley who require the help. Yeah, drop me an email and we'll sort that out with a suitable donation. What
I'd also like to do, Paul, is when we get our list of picket lines sent out to me for the area, if I can pass that on to you, if there is anything at Wellingborough or anywhere more local that you guys want to come, you are more than welcome to come and join an RMT picket line. We're all very good-natured. We're all very friendly. And we just love to see so many people coming along. So when I get the list of picket lines sent to me, I'll send them out to you guys. And if you want to share that amongst people that you know, please. The more people on picket lines, the louder the voice.
We have a mailing list of about nearly 200 people that across the county. So Corby, Wellingborough, Kettering, Northampton. So I'm quite happy to send that information out. So yeah, please send it to us.
I will do.
Okay, any final points, comrades? No, just a couple of notices. At our next meeting will be on October the 27th, which is the fourth Thursday in October. And I'm really pleased to say that we've got a speaker, Alex May, who is the leader of the Breakthrough Party, who's agreed to come and speak to us. The Breakthrough Party, as I understand it, I know that Dave is a member. It's a relatively new political party on the left that's been formed, and so I, as independent socialists, we welcome contributions from all parts of the socialist left, so we've invited him to come and speak to us, and he's kindly accepted. So that should be a really interesting meeting. And I also understand that the Breakthrough Party is also in informal discussions at this stage in terms of uniting with other political groupings on the left as well. So this is a kind of a new and interesting development to the left of Labour, which will interest people particularly who've recently left the Labour Party or been kicked out of the Labour Party in some cases. So bear that in mind. 27th of October is our next meeting. So that's it really. I don't have any other announcements. Does anybody else have any announcements you want to make of activities or events or what have you? No? Then thank you very much, Wayne, for joining us this evening. And we hope to see you on the picket line during the course of October when you're out. And I'm sure some of us will certainly come and join picket lines and support the dispute. So again, thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to now close the meeting. Or that's okay.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this. It's been a great conversation, and it's been awesome to meet you all. And hopefully we'll all see each other again very, very soon. But thanks for everything. I've really enjoyed this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'll stop the recording.